Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Championship Leadership Podcast. And today I'm really excited. We got Shayna Rattler with us from Dallas, Texas. And did I say your last name correctly? I felt like
You did. It's just like the snake.
it's just like the snake. All right, then I got it. So Shayna Rattler, I'm excited to have you here. Thanks for taking some time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now we're right in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, and
Yeah.
we got the coronavirus going on, trying to figure out what's going on and how to get through this. So depending on when you listen to this and depending on when this comes out, it probably won't come out for another month or so. But yeah, that's the current environment that we're in right now as you listen to this. But the first question for you is, Championship Leadership is the name of the podcast. What comes to mind for you when you hear championship leadership?
I really like that question. I've always been taught that we should do everything with a spirit of excellence. And so to me, when I think about champion, I think about what do champions have to do in order to show up, or how do they show up in order to be viewed as a champion? And I can't help but to think about all of the preparation and perseverance and all the things that we have to go through to be able to show up as a champion. And if we're going to apply it directly to leadership, we have to ask ourselves, like, am I showing up as the best form of myself, so that not only am I a champion in my leadership style, but am I having champion impact over those things that I'm meant to lead?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's great. And man, I just always love the different meetings that people have for championship leadership and the different ideas that they bring up around it. And it's always different. So it's just like,
Yeah, you
just
could
love
probably
that.
put together a little book of all
I,
the different things that
I
people
think so.
say,
Yeah,
different
absolutely.
ways for it.
Yeah, no doubt. I've thought about it too.
Yeah, I bet.
So I might just do that someday. Well, tell us a little bit more about you and like who you are. Shayna Speaks is the name of your company, and that's basically where we could find you just about anywhere, social platforms, website. So tell us a little bit more about you and how you've gotten to where you are today in your life.
Absolutely. So I have been in the coaching and consulting world since 2007, but it didn't start out where you would have thought. I actually went to school to be a physical therapist.
Oh, wow.
And shortly after physical therapy school, I had all these contracts that were falling in my lap that I couldn't fulfill. So I was having to bring other therapists on board. And before you knew it, I had this full blown staffing agency, and I hadn't even been out of school an entire year. And so people were like, well, why don't you start this and just do it that way? And so I think within about 3 months, we had 23 therapists that were working for us. I was only 28 years old. And at that time, I had and I don't say any of this to brag, but to give context, 28 years old, I'm driving a $65,000 vehicle. I'm in a 3,000 square foot house in a gated community. I'm carrying all the big bags. And, people are coming to me like, well, how do you start a business and how do you grow a business? And I recognized at that time, Nate, that not only was I gifted at being able to teach others what it is that I had accomplished, I really felt like that was a calling that was on my life. And so I started off in 2007 being more of a general business coach. And then that kind of went into, well, how do you get corporate contracts and corporate sponsors? But what I found along the way, and I guess it was, kind of that tap on my shoulder of maybe you should be, looking at shifting this a little bit, is that I found that when I was coaching people, whether it was an organization or whether it was an individual, I always had to help them get out of their way. We always ended up dealing with what was going on in their personal life, or what are those different things that are getting in the way of you showing up like a champion, if I'm going to use your time frame. And so fast forward to January of 2018, I just really felt like God was up to something, but I had no idea what it was that he was up to, or had no idea what was going to come after that. And then there were a lot of disruptions that happened in my life in 2018 and 2019, but it all landed me where I am today of, helping high performing leaders, especially those that are finding themselves burned out, whether it's from their business or their career, helping them to really try to figure out, like, what is this muck that you're in? Like, oh my God, what is going on?
Yeah.
So, I think everything we go through lands us exactly where it is that we're supposed to be in the world and what it is that we're supposed to be doing. So from 2017 to now 2020, I still am, providing support and guidance around some of the same areas of business and life. But it's just kind of zigzagged its way into where we are now, where it started off as like, oh, here's how you start a business.
Yeah. So that's interesting. My wife's a physical therapist, and yeah, it's crazy to hear that you come fresh out of school, and before you know it, you get this full-blown staffing agency of 23 other physical therapists.
Yeah. And I call it being open to the zigzag, right? I think
Yeah.
so many times we're so attached to the outcome, or let me say this a different way. Rather than being attached to the outcome, we're so attached to either the vehicle that gets us there or the people that get us there that we can miss what it is. And so I'm grateful that I was open to the zigzag, because I could have been like, no, you went to school to be a therapist,
Yeah. Right.
and could have missed out on destiny.
Yeah, totally. No, I think that's a huge, that's a huge lesson for a lot of people, right? Is like, it doesn't have to look one certain way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how often does it ever look the way we thought it was going to look?
Yeah, like
Or the way we
almost
planned
never,
it
right?
to look? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's like right now. It's, I think people are forced to try and figure out a different route, right?
Absolutely.
And they're so used to doing it one way for so long. With the coronavirus and people at home and businesses shut down, like,
Yep.
it's a time to focus and figure out and get creative on some other ways we can provide value and kind of pull everybody through this. So
Absolutely.
yeah, great timing actually for
Yeah, it
that
is great
conversation.
timing.
Yeah. Who are some leaders or coaches or mentors that have impacted you, and more so, like, how have they impacted you? What is it about them that really stuck out to you, or that you maybe taken and helped to mold you and who you are as a championship leader?
Yeah. There are a lot of mentors that I have that no one would know if I mentioned their name.
Sure.
But then I've been fortunate enough to be mentored by, some of the biggest names in the industry. And I think the lesson was always the same. Well, the lesson that they taught me may not have been the same, but what I took from it was always the same. And it was, after you define what it is that you want for yourself, will you have the courage to go after it? Because, I can remember when I was growing up, my grandmother told me that the cemetery was full of ideas. And I
Yeah.
don't think clearly it's not because of lack of ideas, but why are there so many dead ideas? And I believe it's because many of us don't necessarily have the courage to go after what it is that we say we want to have. And when I looked at the impact of my mentors on my life, or looking what they had been able to accomplish, it wasn't because they didn't have fear. It wasn't because they didn't have, uncertainty and all those things that can get in the way. It was that they just had the courage to say, you know what? I'm going to keep going even when I don't want to. I'm going to keep going even when it doesn't feel good. I'm going to keep going even when it's not comfortable or convenient. And I think that I contribute a lot of my success to being able to be willing to push through.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What is the importance of having some of those people in your life for you?
I think, especially for people that are type A like myself, and I think
Yeah.
a lot of high performing leaders, probably do have some variation of type A in them.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
think
Yeah.
we have the tendency a lot of times to think that we're just going to figure it out on our own. Like,
Yeah.
especially if we always have. If we've always been able to be like, okay, I'm going to set the goal. I'm going to figure out what it takes to meet the goal, and then I'm going to do it. We kind of get like this martyr syndrome, if you will, like, oh, I'll just figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
Well, me, I'm like, why spend time doing that? Like, why not find someone who's 10 steps ahead of you and has, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and just do what the heck they tell you to do? Like, why are we trying to figure all this out on our own? We waste so much time, waste so much money. And I'm like, hey, I tell my clients all the time, I've bumped my head enough times. I've scaled my knees enough times. Like,
Yeah.
why not let my life be your lessons
Yeah,
instead of
totally.
trying to figure it out on your own?
Yeah. But it just makes me think. I had a memory in my Facebook's awesome, right? Because I got these memories that pop up from a year ago. And it was just a quote that I had posted from I'm gonna butcher this old philosopher's name, but Epictetus,
That guy.
you did that guy. All right. Yeah, perfect. But it is impossible to begin to learn what he thinks he already knows, right? So yeah, if you're not open to the things that you don't know and you just think that you got it all figured out, then you wouldn't be open to having other leaders and coaches and mentors in your life, and you're probably not going to be a super powerful championship leader either. So
And one other thing that came to mind when you were saying that, Nate, is that I think sometimes in leadership, we're so expected to always have the answers that we're afraid not to have the answer. Whatever we think negatively is going to happen as a result of that. But we've been so conditioned that we always have to have the answers, right? When I'm doing, training inside of a corporation, I tell them at the beginning, like, this is a safe space. We're here to learn. I get the fact that you always have to have the answers, but you don't have to have them in here. And you just literally see like this posture change of like, oh, wow, I finally don't have to know it all,
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, I think, the insecure leaders feel like they have to have all the answers. But the great, the powerful, the championship leaders, the secure leaders, they don't. And then they're like, no, I don't have the answer to that. And that's why I got a team. That's why I got all you guys in the room.
Right.
So
I don't know.
we can do this
I'll
together.
try to find it out, or I'll go find somebody who does.
Yeah, right.
What do
right.
you think?
One of us has got to know what the answer is. And if not, we'll figure it out. Like you said.
Figure it out. Right.
Well, talk to me a little bit about your vision. I always like to talk about vision because I think championship leaders have great vision, and oftentimes it's one that others aren't able to see, or they might see it and they'll be like, that's crazy, right? Like, because they can't really see it for what it is. And then these championship leaders have the vision or the courage to take action on it as well. So I get two camps on this sometimes. It's like, well, I don't, I really just try and stay present. I don't have a big vision because I know that things change and constantly change, or some are like, I got a very clear vision of where I'm going. So I like to say either like, what's your vision, or what's the impact that you want to make? Because I think people know what the impact is they want to make. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
The vision that I have, Nate, is one where, because I am a believer in God, and I have a vision that people will be able to have a very secure identity of who they are in Him. And then they can take that identity and, like we alluded to earlier, now have a confidence and a courage to become who it is that He's designed you to be. And I think a lot of times we don't really know who that is in the early stages of our lives. I think there's a process of becoming that many of us go through. And so my vision is that we really get to a point where people are confident in who they have been created to be. And I want to, emphasize that, because there may be somebody listening, that says, well, I don't particularly believe, in God. I may believe in something else, but in your DNA, you're designed to be a specific way and to accomplish a specific thing in the earth. And I would love to see when we get to the point where we all have a secure identity of who that is, so that we can start to do the things to get there. Because if we want to talk about impact, and we want to talk about all of the things that are crazy in the world that we live in today, and I think, it's very timely to see, how we're reacting and all the different things that are going on. I think it's going to take champion leaders being so confident about who it is that they're supposed to become and what it is that they're supposed to be, so that we can change the trajectory of the craziness. If it's ever going to change, I think it's going to be left up to champion leaders to do so, to be able to have that impact. But if we don't know who we're meant to be, and we don't know what it is that we're meant to do, and oftentimes it's not who we are now or what we're doing now, I think we lose the opportunity to have that impact.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that as well. Yeah. It's this time more than any, we need the championship leaders to step up. Right. And because we need leaders right now. So.
And one of the things that I get asked very often is like, Shayna, you talk a lot about shifting. Like, what is this whole concept of shifting? And it usually comes after some form of disruption. Now, it's not always on a large scale like what we're seeing with the coronavirus, but sometimes it's a disruption in, in your career or your relationships, or, just this feeling that something is off. But oftentimes when God is trying to get our attention that we either need to become something, different, or we need to do something different, it has to come in the form of a disruption. And because I think, those things are happening to get our attention, like we would ignore the nudges. If things in my business in 2018 would have continued to go as well as they were, I would have never paid attention to the fact that I was being asked to do something different.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It was like, let me disrupt the things that have your attention, so that you're left going, well, wow, I got to do something. Even if I don't know what it is, I know this isn't working.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's great. And that's powerful. Cause I think even right now, I mean, it's, there can be two camps too. There can be the, hey, what's the opportunity and the gift in what's going on right now? And we can choose to find that. Or it's just like, man, the world's going to end and this sucks, and they just don't do anything.
And just whatever, right?
Yeah, so
we get paralyzed, paralyzed instead of empowered.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As we start to wrap up here, I do want to ask this question. This is my favorite question here is, what's a turning point or a critical moment that you've had where had you decided to make a different decision? You didn't, of course, because you're here where you're at today because of that decision. And I'm sure you got many that come to mind, but what's one that really sticks out to you in your mind right now as I ask this question, that had you made that decision, you could be a very different place right now? Because I think there's a lot of listeners that, especially right now, are in that moment. And they're trying to decide, and they're kind of the fork in the road, getting pulled one way, but really want to go the other way. And it's hard. It's just like what you said. There's a lot of ideas and dreams and wisdom in the graveyards and the cemeteries, because they didn't have the courage to make that decision in that moment.
Yeah. I think it's an extension of what we were just talking about a moment ago. I found myself at a split rock, fork in the road moment, just about a year and a half ago. It hasn't even been that long. And had I not have been willing to answer, because I was being called, and I don't mean a literal calling like, oh, you're being called to preach or anything like that, but I was being called higher. Yeah. And I had a choice to make. I could either say, I can keep going business as usual, which I don't know why we would do that, because all the evidence in front of you is not working. Your business and relationships are drying up. You are, nothing seems to be working the way that it used to work. Let me tell you this. I found myself at a point where people were hiring me to do things that I could probably do in my sleep. And all of a sudden it was like everything I touched turned to dirt instead of gold. I definitely didn't have the Midas touch. Yeah. And had I have been either too fearful to try something new, or would have allowed people to should on me, because there's a lot of people that would have said, well, you should do this, you should do that, you've started this. I would have not have been where I am now. And what I mean when I say where I am now, the lives that I have been able to impact just within the last 6 months has been mind-blowing. Like, I could go through, so many scenarios of leaders that I have worked with, some that, if I said their names, you would be like, what? Like they were uncertain. Yeah. They were, you know what I mean? And so, and who knows, I probably would have gone back to a job. If I'm being 100% honest, I probably would have gone back to a job. And although that job may have been fruitful financially, a part of me would have died every single day.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's single powerful.
Day. Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah. That's in those moments, it takes a lot of courage to be able to make those decisions, but almost always, I think we look back and we're like, thank God I made that decision, right? It worked out. That's the definition of faith, I think, is right. We want to know that the result is going to be there before we make the decision, and God has different plans for us, right?
Right. And we also want to avoid the process if we can. We're like, can we just jump straight to the promise? I really don't want to. I don't really want to go through the process.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And one last thing here, what are one or two things that you could leave with the listeners that, if they implemented today would actually absolutely help them move forward today in their life?
I think if you recognize that your shifting season is going to be more about being than doing, I think that is the best tip that I can give you for shifting successfully. I've got a whole, free training where we talk about how do you recognize the need to shift? How do you shift?
Yeah.
The power of the shift.com. You can get that free training. But I think that there's a lot of things that you can do, but it's usually not about the doing. I think it's really about being. So if you would really just start to jot down what are some of the areas of your life that you need to focus on in order to become a better version of you, then you're going to be in a better position to identify and focus on what you need to do next.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. And
So
what
that it's not an
poweroftheshift.com
idea.
is where we could get that free
Yeah, the training is
tool
called
training.
6 Shifts to Overcome Burnout and Upgrade Your Business and Personal Growth. And it really talks about, how do you identify the need to shift, and then how do you shift? And the power of the shift.com is where they can get that.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll get that linked up as well. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I appreciate you taking some time to be here, and it's been great. I loved it. Anything else that you want to leave with the listeners before we close this out?
I think we, have said it a lot of times in a roundabout way. And I have a friend that this is her tagline, defining success for, defining success for yourself and having the guts to go after it. And so that's what I really would want to leave people with, is that, you get to decide what success looks like, and you get to decide whether or not you go after it. So the thing that I would lead you with is that, either find that mentor, hire that coach, read that book, whatever it is that you have to do to equip yourself to get to where it is that you need to be next, or who it is that you need to be next.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for being here today, Shayna.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.